everyone, it's me, KatieBeth again. And today is a two-part craft video, half review. So making tumblers was a huge trend a few years ago until now. It's kind of dying out now. And so, of course, I'm jumping on the bandwagon about 3 years too late, but I really wanted to give it a try. So I purchased all the stuff for it about 2 years ago when Michael's Craft Store still had great coupons. So I got this spinner about 2 years ago with a Michael's coupon. Michael's used to let you use Joann's and Michael's coupons. Now they only let you use Michael's, and they're always 20% or something really low. But back in the day, in 2018, 2019, you could use 50% off coupons, and I used it on this cup tumbler. I thought I would use it right away. I actually almost bought more, but I wanted to try it out first to make sure it actually worked. And then I put it in my car and never used it. So years later, today's the day. Also, I'd like to note that it's taken me so long to get into this project that I believe Michael's actually has a newer model already of this cup tumbler, that instead of this type of cup holder, that was weird, sorry. So instead of this type of cup holder, it has a different type of expanding cup holder, is what I believe the difference in the models is. But I think this one will work just as great, and you can still find this one on the internet. So let's test it out. I also got my tumblers at Michael's Craft Store about 5 years ago using coupons also. I hate paying full price for stuff. So now that we've talked about what we're going to be doing and what we're using, let's get right into it and do it. So starting off, here's some images for everybody that loves to watch packaging and unboxing. I'm one of them. Here's the back. Gives you some idea of what's going to be inside. So opening it up, this is the first view you get. And inside, it's pretty simple. It's just the spinner and some directions. Now the plug is a USB and it doesn't come with a block. So you'll have to use your own iPhone charger or some other type of plug to plug it in with. So smooshing this into my tummy, this seems to be the way to adjust for cup size. And I did adjust it to be the biggest size at first so I could try to fit this giant mug on, but it was too big for the actual mouth of the mug, so I did make it smaller to fit it in there. So it does fit, then you just have to tighten it up to make it actually fit on there tight. And here's the problem I had with using this giant mug, is the handle was too big for it. It just kept hitting the plate and wouldn't spin. So in my MacGyver mind, I thought I could just unscrew the plate and take it off and use it without the plate, but the plate is also screwed in from the inside where these little bumps are, and I'd have to undo the complete casing that encases the motor to even get to that part to unscrew those, so it wasn't worth it and I abandoned that idea. So now, trying out the functionality. It's the on switch and speed. So that's as fast as it goes. And then turning it down, that's about as slow as it goes. So I like that it has a speed variation. That's pretty cool. So now, picking out the colors I wanted for my cup, I picked out this mint color and this shiny metallic color. Here's one of my giant beginner's mistakes that I make and made. I left my machine on what I had it on last, which was a thick iron-on vinyl, whereas the one I was using currently was a thin vinyl, and it just really cut it up to be unusable. So make sure you put it on whatever setting you need to do. I put it on custom and then picked the vinyl that it was supposed to be set for. And as you can see, it worked out pretty well. This vinyl was a little more difficult because it's kind of crinkly, but it came out pretty well. Also, my board is super not tacky right now at all, not sticky, so the vinyl wouldn't stick to it, so I did have to use some of this Elmer's spray adhesive glue to kind of get it to stick on there. That's a little hint if your board is also not sticky. And as always, I'm just using my YouTube logo to try things out with. I'm going to fast forward through this to make it a little quicker. So I just had to get it stuck on there where I wanted. And I did use this transfer tape. It's one of my first times using the transfer tape, and it's so much easier than trying to transfer each little tiny detail. Without the transfer tape, I was getting everything just stuck to each other. So the transfer tape is really nice to use. I've also seen people use press and seal cling wrap. It also works pretty well. I just happen to have some transfer tape that I had bought, so that's what I'm using. And it helps if you smash it down. I used a butter knife. People use credit cards, or if they have actual scrapers for it, that works too. And it was a little more difficult finding the placing I wanted for this. So I had to keep putting it down and taking it up. And with the transfer tape, until you really put pressure on it, it pretty much stays stuck to the tape and is okay. So when you want it to stick, you put that pressure on it and then just peel it off. And I was thinking I might want to put some design on the top, but I can't decide what yet, so I'm just leaving it blank for now. Okay, now I didn't do this the right way because I just did it the way I thought it would work. I didn't look up any type of external directions on how to do this. So this isn't exactly the proper way that you should be epoxying your cups. It's just the way that it made sense to my brain at the time. I just poured it on top and then tried to smooth it over. It was kind of difficult trying to get an even amount everywhere. So I just kept pouring more on and using the popsicle stick to get it spread. And I've also fast-forwarded this video a tiny bit, so it did take even longer than what you're looking at right now. So because I had poured it the way I had, I then had to use my hand to stick it on the actual spinner. Gloved hand, of course. Which then got all my fingerprints, well, finger pressure prints on the cup. So it really messed up the nice even layer I was trying to get on the cup with the epoxy. And since you have to touch it so much to try to get it evenly put on the spinner, I really just messed it up there. So as you can see, the epoxy is not even at all. But I wanted to try it out, getting the spinning going. So now I'm going to go make some more epoxy to pour over this and try to smooth it out more. This I also thought would spread a little more evenly, but because it's spinning, it just kept going. So I thought maybe if I spinned it faster, maybe the liquid would spin faster and more evenly, or I could let it drip on there and it would just go quicker. I was really unsure of what I was doing here. So now I'm trying to use the popsicle stick to get it smoothed out and even. And because I didn't get the cup exactly straight on the spinner, it's spinning at a curve, so I'm having a real struggle even trying to get this evenly spread. Because it's spinning at a curve, even though the stick is pretty straight, it's just not quite getting on there straight. And with every rotation on this cup, revolution, I think that I'll be able to get it on there straighter the next round it goes around. It just needs one more spin and then it'll even out. So it's really quite addicting. And through this process, I just kept doing more layers and more layers. So you think like, oh yeah, it's almost smooth. I'll just try this one more time. Also, wherever you take the stick off, always leaves that kind of wobbly edge. So I went through more and more layers of this process And then I remembered I always see people online using heat guns on their epoxied cups. So I got my old cheap Harbor Freight heat gun on the coolest setting and put it on here to try and get rid of air bubbles, or I thought maybe it would help it harden or dry more evenly. As you'll soon see, I was wrong. So after using the heat gun on low, look right above the cup. There's steam coming off of it. Maybe because it's a metal cup, but it heated it up really oddly. It was steam burning off the top, and it just seemed to make the cup even worse with the distribution of the epoxy. So I ended up having to put more layers on. And see, even after that, there's still just blank spots and uneven spots. So now I'm going to try adding even more on to try and fill in those spots. And by this time, I had watched a tutorial online that said to pour it on and smooth it out with your fingers. So I'm trying to fill in those bumps with my fingers. And I ended up putting it outside. Even though the room was really well ventilated inside, I thought, hey, let's keep it outside, even safer. And this is a new cup that I tried it with the shiny metallic. And even using my fingers to spread it out after leaving it out there for a while, it just didn't dry super evenly. And here's the tops of the cups. I had poured epoxy on and left them out to dry. And the reason I want to do epoxy the tops as well is because the stainless steel is so fingerprinty. I didn't want to be able to leave all my fingerprints on the top of the cup. So my next, maybe not the best idea, is that the extra epoxy that was left on the inside of the cup, that I was just gonna sand it away. And while it is working to sand it down, it leaves a weird look on it. Like you can tell it's not normal. And I also had the fear that if I kept sanding too low, I would be sanding into the metal. You need a hobby, Ashley.
I like your pretty cup. That's great.
Thank you. So even after wiping all the epoxy dust off, it just still didn't look quite right inside. So I feel like I've had half success, half not with these cups that I made. And I came up with some questions to ask all of you. If you are already a cup tumbler and know all the things that I did wrong just watching, feel free to comment below and let me know, because I am still learning. So these are the two cups that I ended up making. I actually really like them. I just see that there's a lot of flaws. Number one flaw is that everything is so bumpy. I didn't get that nice, smooth cup gloss that everyone seems to get. Jen, if you're watching this, I don't know how you got the cups you gave me to be so smooth. Please tell me. So I did realize my mistake after the first one that I made with all these bumps. I watched a quick tutorial that said you use your fingers to put it on and smooth out the bumps. And this is the second one that I made that does have less bumps, but if you're feeling it, you can still feel there's a lot of, it's not quite smooth. However, it is a lot thinner. Like, it just feels thinner, like less of a gloss than this one. This one has a really thick coating on it, and you can feel it. And I actually kind of like that. It gives it like a nice, thick, quality feel to it, whereas the thin one doesn't feel quite as nice as a thick one, even though the thick one's super bumpy. So another issue that I noticed with how I did what I did is because I was putting my projects outside to avoid any types of cancerous fumes, dirt and wind. It was windy, so it would blow on bugs or dust. So my finished products have a lot of just dust on them from being outside. Another issue that I'm not quite sure how to fix yet, but I'm sure someone out there will and will hopefully let me know. So for the cups, I just laid them down and poured the stuff on pretty much and smoothed it out. But that left kind of, let me show you on this one more. It left runoffs with these drips. And so I thought to myself that it would be easy enough to just sand them down. So I did sand them down on this one, which made it less drippy looking, but that's also not nice and professional looking. So people out there who do this for a living or as a more professional hobby than I do, how do you get rid of these drips? Or you just, while it's going every once in a while, give it a wipe to make sure it's not dripping. Another idea that I came up with to maybe eliminate the bumpiness is maybe spread it on with a squeegee. Would that help? Just like one 7-inch wide squeegee so that it's all one height. Because I did notice with my finger, maybe because fingers are not straight, maybe that's what some of the bumpy was, because I was just kind of smoothing it out with my finger like that. So maybe that's what part of the problem was. Is it a thing that maybe you use squeegees to even it out? Anyone? Anyone?
Bueller. Bueller. Bueller.
For the most parts, I felt like the bottoms came out pretty well. Also, similarly to how these would have the runoff, how do you fix the runoff that goes inside of the cup? On this one, I did sand it down, but again, it's not quite the professional look in there. Like, you can tell that I sanded it down, and I was also afraid of sanding it too much and going into the metal. So, what do you do about that, everyone? This one, I kind of left it on, but it's not that bad. Just like a few little drops, so really not bad at all. And these are for my own use, so I won't feel bad about poisoning people. Hopefully I'm not poisoning myself. I think I will just not fill the cups up enough to be in that area. But this one really is not too bad. It was more this one that I got a lot of stuff on when I was thickening, just thickening this stuff right on. But I really do like this texture, not the bump texture, but the feel of the gloss of the epoxy resin versus just a normal stainless steel cup, which gets super fingerprinty. So you can already see this was clean before I touched it, and just touching it really quickly made it really fingerprinty looking. Whereas this one, okay, it's just kind of looking gross, but mostly because of all of the dust that's just stuck in there. So if you are doing these professionally to sell, maybe don't put them outside on a slightly breezy day. Sounds like it should be a dub, but I thought maybe the breezy day would help it set better. I did realize that it might be getting some dust particles or dirt particles on there, but I was more interested in seeing if it would work at all. As far as the functionality of the spinner, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. I did notice that I did get kind of an epoxy glaze on some of the threads here, but luckily, hopefully I won't need those if I need to. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and push this out to see if I just messed everything up by getting those threads glazed over. Huh. So it won't be a problem because not only did I glaze over the threads, I also got epoxy glazed over the spinning wheel that would unlock this to make this part thinner, longer, so you can put other glasses on. Fortunately for me, I think the thing that I will mostly be doing is tumblers, which I did make the perfect size for this, so won't be a problem. But if you're going to do this and haven't already jacked yours up already, I am going to recommend putting some painter's tape over this so that if gloss does dry on it, you can just peel off the paint and this will still be functional. I'm sure I could peel off this epoxy and it would still be functional, but for what I need for it, it'll still work fine. Another recommendation I would give is to cover this plate, because now I have epoxy dried on here and I can take the time to sand it off or scrape it off, but I think I'll just leave it on because That's still plenty of space, but I can see if I were going to use this a lot, it could possibly become a problem if I just keep layering up. So put a piece of paper on here that you can throw away the extra, or a silicone mat that you can just peel it off. Because eventually, if I keep going this way, I will just get layers and layers, and then eventually the cup won't be able to spin. One issue that I did have with this item is that I had also tried to epoxy mugs that had a handle that stuck out farther than this. So when it tried to spin, the handle would just hit this plate. And so it was basically useless. And because of that, and that I still want to epoxy those mugs, I did end up Amazoning another spinner that doesn't have this plate, and I'll be trying that out next week to see how it works in comparison to this guy. But overall, other than the mugs that had the handle that came down too far to use with this plate, I feel like it worked really great. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. I'd even left it outside in the heat, and it still kept going. I did cover it to shield it from the sun somewhat, and I think that might have helped it from overheating. But between these two cups and all my mistakes, I had this thing running for basically like 20 hours, and it still was working just fine. So this cup tumbler spinner did basically exactly what it's supposed to do. I'm torn in between giving it 4.5 stars just because you can't use cups with a big handle on it, or between giving it a 5-star because it does everything it's supposed to do other than that cup handle thing, and even the picture on it, you're not really supposed to use cups with handles, so it's not like it's an advertising problem, because it doesn't say use your cups with big handles on them. So, I think I'm going to go with a 5-star out of 5 for this guy. Did everything it said it would do, other than the handle thing, which it doesn't claim it's going to do. So the $25 that I paid for this, I feel like is well worth it. Again, I got it at half price. If I was paying $50, ooh, I'm sure there's a lot of Amazon items that are similar for a fraction of the cost. One of which I will be testing out next week. But the Michael's Craft Store Spin It. Overall, great job. Most of the mistakes I made were my own mistakes of not knowing what I was doing. But the spinner did exactly what it was supposed to. Now it's time for the questions that I wrote down to ask everyone, in case you know how to do this better than I do, and can answer some of these questions for me. Number 1, is my heat gun too strong to use for this? I've seen some videos of other people using the heat gun to get rid of the air bubbles, and they just have a little tiny heat gun air bubbling it. Whereas mine, I had put it on the lowest setting, and it either seemed to make the epoxy smoke, maybe because it's a metal cup, or the air pressure from it would leave an indent in the cup just from the pressure pushing the epoxy out, and then it seemed to leave a bare spot because the epoxy had been pushed out. So, is using a heat gun just a bad idea, or is my heat gun just too strong to use for this type of project? Oh, next, I've already kind of addressed it, is how do you keep the inside edges nice? Do you maybe put down painter's tape first? So then if it does get on the inside, you can just peel it off? That, maybe I just answered my own question. That seems like a great idea. My next question is, how many coats do you normally put on the cup? I did one coat, and then it still seemed pretty bumpy, so I did another coat to try and fill in the bumps. But then again, with me trying to smooth those out, maybe I just made it more uneven again, because it still seems like it's just not all filled in evenly. Another question, as I mentioned, because I had put these outside to do their curing, drying, and bugs and dirt kept landing on them, how do you keep that from happening? Just don't do it outside? But then if I do it inside and have like a fan blowing the fumes away from the house, would I not also blow more dust on it? So I'm really unsure about that. And lastly, is it okay to be drying epoxy resin out in the sun? The cup that I made in the morning and had a lot of direct sunlight, even though it had thicker layers, seemed like it dried quicker because it was out in the sun, versus the one that ran into nighttime hours and had thinner layers. It seemed like it took longer for this guy to dry. just because the sun wasn't out. But also, I was worried with the sun, would it yellow the epoxy at all? It seems to look fine now, but I wasn't sure if maybe like the sun would age the epoxy or maybe cause more chemicals to come out, or if there was any warnings against drying your epoxy out in the sunlight. I didn't find anything about that in the videos I had looked up, but maybe someone out there knows and could tell me, because that'd be great. Well, thanks for watching all my trials and errors with this Spin It memory keeper. We are memories keeper. Tumbler spinner. So again, Tumbler great. My Tumbler skill, not great. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. Keep it crafty out there, and have a great rest of your day.